Hi there, welcome to the Eat More, Weigh Less Diet program. I'm your host, Dick Allgaier. I'm the health reporter at KITV, the ABC affiliate in Honolulu, Hawaii. In this program, we're going to show you how to eat more and weigh less and keep it off without counting calories or going hungry or relying on expensive programs, pills, or powders. We're going to explain the scientific truth about losing weight. We'll look at what's wrong with dieting in America, why Americans are actually eating less but putting on weight. We'll explain how to eat yourself thin. What's the mechanism in your body that makes you feel satisfied? We will explain how you can eat twice as much food to lose weight, how to identify foods that will keep you slim using the EMI scale, and the foods to avoid. We'll explain the importance of limiting fat. Now, we've all heard we're supposed to cut the fat from our diet, but we're going to learn why. What's the difference between fat foods and healthy foods? And did you know that all calories are not created equal? We'll find out why some types of calories are easily turned into fat and why some types of calories keep you running lean. And we'll explain how eating more will affect your overall health, how to influence your metabolic rate, lower your blood pressure and cholesterol, prevent or even reverse heart disease and diabetes. You know, obesity is an epidemic in America. One recent survey found that an incredible 90% of Americans feel they weigh too much. Dieting is a $50 billion a year industry in the United States, yet Americans are getting fatter by the year. Overweight people often have low self-esteem, and obesity puts you at risk for life-threatening diseases like cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, arthritis, and a number of other chronic diseases. Glance at the checkout stand at every supermarket in America and you'll see a new diet every month on every woman's magazine. Now, there are many who will gladly sell you pills and shakes or charge you for diet plans that basically tell you to eat less and go hungry. Yet scientific research shows again and again that diets don't work. Is this epidemic of obesity some kind of a genetic malfunction in Americans? No. Our genetics have not changed. Our diet has. Now, the answer is easy. Overweight people don't need more willpower. They don't need nutritional milkshakes. They just need to eat the right kind of food. Now, as a health reporter, I interview doctors for a living, and I follow the latest advances in medicine. I want to tell you that I'm doing this program because what you're about to see here is the truest thing I've ever found. Everything here is backed up by scientific research published in top peer-reviewed medical journals. And I know it's true on a personal level because when I turned 30, I started putting on weight. I had a big gut, I had a double chin, I could barely run a mile. Well, I met Dr. Terry Shintani. I started following his advice. I changed my diet. I didn't diet. In fact, I eat 4 or 5 times a day, but I lost weight effortlessly. I'm now 43. I do triathlons in my spare time. My cholesterol is 145, my body fat is a lean 12%, and my blood pressure is that of a teenage marathon runner. Now, I eat as much as I want and I never feel deprived. I enjoy food as much as anyone. When we decided to do this program, we wondered about how to separate all the clutter from what we're going to tell you here. All the bogus diets, the phony infomercials, and misleading information. Well, here's the difference. We're not trying to sell you pills or powders or expensive supplements. What we're talking about here is real food. Food that you can eat for the rest of your life. You can find out for yourself by simply going to the supermarket and buying fresh whole food and eating it. All we're going to do here is help you know which food to eat. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Terry Shintani, the expert we'll be hearing from in this program, who will be explaining how food affects your metabolism and why some foods cause you to become overweight while others keep you slim. Dr. Shintani is a physician, a medical doctor, who has been on the clinical faculty at the University of Hawaii Medical School. He's the director of preventive medicine at the Waianae Coast Comprehensive Health Center. Dr. Shintani has a master's degree in nutrition from Harvard University. His clinical studies on nutrition and weight loss have received worldwide acclaim and have been published in prestigious peer-reviewed medical journals. He's the author of several books, The Eat More, Weigh Less Diet and The Eat More, Weigh Less Cookbook. I'd like to introduce you now to Dr. Terry Shintani. Doctor, what's wrong with Americans? Why are so many Americans overweight?
Well, there are many reasons why any one individual might be overweight, but America as a whole has so many overweight people because our food supply has changed so drastically over the years. It's so much higher in fat and processed food that our body's response to this unnatural food is to put on fat and to keep putting it on even regardless of the number of calories that we eat.
People try so many different diets. What's wrong with dieting?
Well, first of all, it doesn't work. In the long run, studies have shown that people gain the weight back if they restrict their calories and portion sizes and diet over the years. What's really wrong with dieting is that we look at it too mechanically. The knee-jerk response to dieting is to say, well, you need to eat less calories and to keep doing that. But people really can't do that in the long run because we're ignoring their hunger drive. When we ignore the hunger drive, ultimately that hunger drive is going to win out, and we wind up overriding the diet, and it's not long before we gain the weight back.
You said that our food has changed over the years. How so?
Well, there are three main things that have changed over the years. Number one, we eat a lot more fat than we used to. Number two, we eat a lot more in the way of animal products. And number three, our food is much more refined than it was in the past.
Okay, let's explore those points one by one. First of all, how much more fat are we consuming than our ancestors did?
Well, in ancient times, people ate a diet that was somewhere around 10% fat. It varies from culture to culture, but it was generally low in fat. Today, we eat somewhere around 36 to 42% fat. It's about 3 to 4 times as much fat as we used to eat in the past.
Okay, most people admit that we are eating more fat, but doctor, you say we're eating more animals and animal products. Most people, they have the belief that humans were hunter-gatherers, that the man went out and brought down a wildebeest or a wild boar or something and brought back meat to the table every day.
Right, I think that, people see the picture of cavemen cooking a piece of a woolly mammoth or something like that, but really, in reality, hunter-gatherers were primarily vegetarians. They were gatherers more than they were hunters. The women would go out and gather food, grains and tubers and fruit and that kind of thing, and that was most of their diet. The hunting part was done occasionally, and they'd eat only perhaps once in 7 or 8 days animal flesh, if that often.
I read a study that said Native Americans, American Indians, were not the great meat-eating hunters that we were led to believe, that they ate mostly corn and squash and vegetables, and that they didn't start hunting until the Europeans brought horses and firearms over.
That's right. The myth of the American Indians eating lots of buffalo meat, well, that was only possible in large amounts after the horse was introduced to America. But American Indians were primarily grain eaters and vegetable eaters. At the heart of every culture is a grain or starchy food-based diet. For example, the Egyptians ate barley as their main food. Europeans used wheat and rye. Of course, Asians always subsisted as on rice as their main food. And of course, a staple of the Hawaiian diet and the Polynesians was taro, which is a starchy staple tuber.
Okay, so Americans are eating more meat, and meat has a lot of fat, and that's causing us to become overweight. But what about protein? Don't we need the protein in meat?
Well, we all need protein, but we get plenty of protein in grains and vegetables and beans. We don't really need to eat meat to get our protein. In fact, meat probably has too much protein for our own good.
So refined foods make us fat because they give us calories without filling us up. Now, Doctor, you mentioned that diets fail because no one has the willpower to starve themselves forever. How does the body know when you've had enough food?
Well, the body receives signals, or the brain receives signals when we eat food to tell us when we're satisfied. For example, the brain senses the calories that it's eaten. The brain also senses hormones that are secreted in response to eating. And one of the most important factors that's neglected by diets is the fact that we really need to have the stomach stretched to a certain point so that it sends signals to the brain that it is full, so that we know when to stop eating.
So let's say you eat a big greasy double cheeseburger. What kind of signals are sent through your brain when you eat all that grease?
Well, when we eat a greasy cheeseburger, it's so concentrated in calories that certainly we do get the signal that we're satisfied. But for one thing, we eat that so quickly because it actually winds up being so little food that we'll keep eating and the signal won't reach the brain in time, and we'll wind up actually overeating in terms of calories. And yet the stomach is still empty because the food doesn't turn out to be very much. And the stomach still wants to eat more because it's not stretching and it's not receiving those signals from the lining of the stomach that it's full.
So now the question is, how do we know which foods will fill our stomach and allow us to eat a lot and stay thin? Is there a way to know which food will do that?
Actually, I've created a scale which I call the Eat More Index. And what that does is it tells us how many pounds of a particular food it takes to give us a day's worth of calories. In that way, we can tell which foods are going to fill us up before we get too many calories. And in choosing foods using this scale, we can actually eat until we're completely full, and we'll still not only maintain weight, but actually start losing weight.
Now, by the way, your book, The Eat More, Weigh Less Diet, has a table in the back that compares many different foods according to this EMI index. Now, we have a little demonstration to show you here to give you an idea of how much food it takes to fill you up in a day, to fill up your stomach. Now, how many calories does an average person need to consume in a day?
You can average it to around 2,500 calories.
Okay, so we need 2,500 calories a day just to get our bodies through the day. Now, we have some various foods here. For example, we have some corn. This is how much corn you could eat in a day before you'd exceed your calories?
That's right, and that's how the Eat More Index works. It describes a number of pounds of food it takes to provide one day's calories. In terms of corn, the EMI value of corn would be 6.5. That translates to about 30 ears of corn.
You say you can eat 6 pounds of corn or 30 ears of corn and not exceed your day's calories.
Right.
Now, I love corn, but I couldn't eat 30 ears of corn in a day.
Right, and that's the logic of it. Because if it's too much for you to eat in one day, then it'll actually help you lose weight.
Okay, we've heard an apple a day keeps the doctor away. How many apples, doctor, would you need to eat to fill your day's calories?
Well, apples rate about a 9.6 on the EMI scale, and that means you'd have to eat about 31 apples to give you one day's worth of calories.
And I don't think you could eat 31 apples in a day.
right.
Now, broccoli, some people like it, some don't. I love it. How much broccoli can you eat in a day?
Broccoli rates a 17.1 on the EMI scale, which means it takes 17.1 pounds of broccoli to provide you one day's worth of calories, and that's what it looks like.
So you could eat all this broccoli, 17 pounds, and you would not begin to get fat because you
That's
wouldn't
right.
exceed your day's calories.
Right.
Okay, how about potatoes? People think that potatoes are fattening.
A myth is that potatoes are actually fattening food. Actually, potatoes will help you lose weight as well because it rates a 9.6 on the EMI
Which
scale.
means you can eat 9 pounds of potatoes in a
Right,
day.
and that translates to somewhere around 20 potatoes.
20 potatoes before you exceed your calories.
Right.
Now we have the fast food. This is the cheeseburger and fries. How many of these can we eat before we exceed our calories?
This actually represents one day's worth of calories. 2 burger, fries, and a shake. And you know that people can eat this much. If you had one for lunch, had one for dinner, you'd have to eat something else.
That's it. You've exceeded your day's calories.
That's right.
Right there.
And if you consider how much food there is in fast food meals such as these, it's approximately 636 grams of food, or about 1.4 pounds of food per meal. On the other hand, if you pick high EMI foods, such as those we just described, you could easily design a meal that's twice as much food or even 3 times as much food and is more filling with less calories. Here's an example of a plate of a large meal based on high EMI foods, which contains fewer calories than a fast food meal like this one, but which is over 4 pounds of food and is actually nearly 3 times as much food.
Now, we've all heard about cutting the fat out of our diet. Dr. Shintani, what's wrong with fat? Why is fat so bad?
Well, first of all, eating a lot of fat makes it very difficult to lose weight. It's the most concentrated form of calories, so we get a lot of calories in when we eat fat, and it doesn't fill the stomach up. Another thing that's wrong with fat is that there are a number of health problems that are associated with high-fat diets, including heart disease, cancer, diabetes, strokes, and in terms of health, we want to keep fat down to a minimum in our diet.
Okay, now we've got some figures that we're going to be showing here, and before I talk about the figures, I want to give you a visual reference of just what a gram is, because we're going to be throwing around grams as a unit of measurement. This right here is a raisin, and it's about a gram. So when we talk about a gram, we're talking about this much. But when you refer to a gram, it can contain vastly different amounts of calories depending on what kind of food it is.
That's right. In terms of calories, fat is 9 or 10 times more concentrated than other forms of food. Let me give you an example. Fat has 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates, things like sugar in fruits and vegetables, have about 4 calories a gram. And when you take the example of brown rice, for example, it's just got 1 calorie per gram, so that you can see that contrary to what people think, rice is not a fattening food. Another thing that's wrong with fat is that it doesn't fill your stomach up. Just 1 small tablespoon of olive oil, which is pure fat, contains 120 calories. Compare that to an average size medium baked potato, which is about 120 calories in its entirety.
And obviously a baked potato is going to fill your stomach a lot better than a tablespoon of oil.
That's right.
Okay, so fat doesn't fill your stomach. What else is wrong with fat?
Well, another thing that's wrong with fat is it seems to change our metabolic rate. When we eat food, our metabolic rate goes up slightly, but when we eat starches, it goes up a lot more compared to when we eat fat. So when we eat fat, our metabolic rate remains lower than it would be if we ate a lot more complex carbohydrate.
But we hear a lot of experts saying that we do need some fat. How much fat do we need in our diet?
Well, actually, the amount of fat that we really need is very small. It actually amounts to somewhere around a teaspoon of fat a day. You can get fat from all your foods anyway. You don't need to add any oil in the form of refined oils. You can get it from your fruits, vegetables, grains, and beans very easily. An ear of corn, for example, has 1 gram of fat. Even a cup of cooked oatmeal has 2.5 grams of fat, and a vegetable like a broccoli has some fat as well. 2 cups of broccoli, for example, has 1 gram of fat.
So you're saying that we can get all the fat we need in whole plant foods, but not too much. Now, what percentage of fat in our diet should we strive for? I know the government says 30% is what we should shoot for.
Well, personally, I think around 10% is more in terms of gaining our optimal health. 10% should be the target.
Doctor, you have a saying that all calories are not created equal. What do you mean by that?
Well, we used to think that calories from fat was equal to the calories from carbohydrate was equal to calories from protein. And this is true, but only when you put them in a test tube in a lab. In the body, they actually react differently. It takes some energy to process the food into body fat, and that's what we're really concerned about, how these calories pertain to putting on body fat. When you eat fat, it only takes 3% of its energy to convert that to body fat. Put it this way, when you eat 100 calories from fat, 97 of these calories can turn right into body fat. Carbohydrate, on the other hand, has about a 23% cost of conversion. That is, it takes 23% of its calories to turn it into fat. So if you eat 100 calories of carbohydrate, it takes 23 of these calories to process it into body fat. So only 77% of these calories can become body fat.
So it's like the old saying, you are what you eat, and if you eat fat, you're going to be fat.
That's actually how it works, and it sounds simplistic, but if you eat a low-fat diet, you'll tend to have a low-fat body. If you eat a high-fat diet, you'll tend to have a high-fat body. For example, in China, they eat a diet that's low in fat, and they have very low rates of obesity. And it turns out that Chinese actually eat more calories than Americans. So something is going on other than calorie intake that has an impact on obesity in China. And there was an interesting study done that was conducted in about 1985 where they compared the effect of different amounts of fat in the diets of mice. They took genetically similar mice and placed them on different diets with differing amounts of fat. They were allowed to eat as much as they wanted, and the only difference was in the amount of fat that was placed in each diet. One group had a diet that was about 13% fat. That group had only a 3% rate of obesity, no matter how much they ate. Another group was put on a diet that was 45% calories from fat, and that group had a much higher rate of obesity, about 48%.
So fat calories make you fat, and the amount of fat is more important than the number of calories overall. So what does that mean in terms of the bottom line?
Well, it basically means that dieting in terms of calories really won't work. It doesn't work in the long run.
Okay, diets don't work. What does it mean in terms of real food?
Well, in terms of real food, what it means is that what we want to do is avoid foods that contain lots of fat if you want to lose weight. First of all, avoid fried foods because they turn actually quite good foods such as potatoes into very unhealthy and fat-promoting foods. Avoid animal products because just about all animal products have high amounts of fat. For example, there's really no such thing as truly lean meat. An average cut of beef is somewhere between 60 to 80% calories from fat.
Now, the meat industry has some labeling tricks that mislead people into thinking that meat really isn't so bad, so fattening. For example, I've got some extra lean ham here. It says on the label that it's 96% fat-free. Now, Dr. Shintani, is this ham really 96% fat-free?
Only in terms of weight. In terms of calorie, it's actually a lot more calories than that. That's about 1/3 fat, 33% fat.
Now the question is, how do we determine that? I guess we look at the nutrition label on the back, and it says here, total calories 60, fat calories 20.
Right. The way you can figure that out for yourself is when you see a label of that kind, you take the calories from fat, in this case, which is 20, and divide it by total calories, which is 60, and you have 20 over 60, and clearly that's 1/3, which is 1/3, so it's 33% fat.
Okay, let's put this formula up on the screen. To find the total fat in any food, you start with the number of fat calories, you divide that by the total number of calories, and that will give you a percentage to know how much fat there really is. Now, doctor, we often hear that overweight people have something wrong with their metabolism.
Well, genes can influence our metabolic rates, and we can't change our genes, but always remember that our weight is affected by genes, but it's also affected by diet, so we can do something about it. We can manipulate our metabolic rates.
So how can you change your metabolism?
Well, there are actually 4 things that we know that we can do. One is, contrary to what most people think, what we should do is avoid a very low-calorie diet. When we restrict our calories, we actually slow our metabolic rate down, and we end up burning fewer calories, and that works against us in terms of dieting. The second way is to speed our metabolic rate up by regular exercise. By regular exercise, we can increase our metabolic rate even while we're not exercising. A third thing we can do is to build muscle, and that is a weight training type exercise. What this does is it allows our muscle to start burning calories so that we have an advantage in terms of our resting metabolic rate. And finally, it's important to eat large amounts of complex carbohydrate. Studies show that this actually increases your resting metabolic rate compared to a diet that's high in fat.
And what about some things you can do besides diet?
Well, I always like to say that health and weight control is a whole person endeavor. It's important to consider positive mental attitude. This is largely about diet, so I don't talk much about it, but I just want to not forget that positive attitude is important. Our spiritual health is also important, and basically the health of the whole person needs to be taken into account. And we don't have time to talk about that, but I just wanted to say that all of that are things that I think are very important to our health.
And of course, when you follow this type of diet, I know that there's a lot of scientific evidence that it reduces your risk of a lot of major diseases.
Absolutely. You lower your cholesterol levels, which translate to a reduced risk of heart disease. You lower your risk of diabetes, a number of cancers, and other forms of atherosclerosis, and other diseases as well.
Some people feel they can't adapt to a really low-fat diet. They have a hard time making the change. They don't have time to make all the food that's involved, and that they aren't going to like the taste of the food. Doctor, what's your advice for making that first step towards changing your diet?
Well, my advice is to try doing it 100%, to go all the way and shop, to stock up your kitchen with these foods so that they're always available, so that you can always have these foods, whether you're snacking or preparing your next meal. what you'll find is you'll discover that some of the foods are available readily at not only a supermarket, but if you want some of the specialty foods, you go to your health food store for that. There are all kinds of whole grains and legumes, vegetables that you'll try. I've tried vegetables I never tried before, and these are now my favorites, and they open up a whole new world of eating. If you look at the bulk food section in the health food store, there are rows and rows of all kinds of health-promoting foods that not only taste good, but help you lose weight without counting calories, as I've described to you. And my advice is to use whole grains as the main part of your diet, such as brown rice or wild rice or oatmeal. I like to, for example, use basmati brown rice because it has a real nice, rich, nutty aroma. And if you stock up on these things and have them available, you'll be more likely to use them regularly.
And there are many new kinds of instant low-fat foods, from prepared soups to chili. This is some delicious low-fat food that is really easy to prepare. A lot of it is just heat and serve. All you do is add hot water. So there's really no excuse anymore. And more restaurants are offering healthy low-fat food. Look at this. This is a garden burger, a low-fat alternative to a high-fat hamburger. You can try a veggie burrito. This one is stuffed with potatoes and beans. It's low-fat and delicious. And look how wonderful these fresh steamed vegetables look.
And there are lots of foods, from whole grains to pastas to ethnic foods to things like vegetable curry to Chinese stir fries to sesame and broccoli salad. And remember, broccoli is a food that you can eat 17 pounds of before you can exceed your day's calories. So there's really, it's actually a food that'll promote weight loss along with the thousands of other foods that appear on the Eat More Index. The key is the flavoring, to make it taste interesting and wonderful and delicious too. And what you can do is learn how to make sauces to make these high bulk, high carbohydrate foods taste good, and that can easily be done.
And you know, you don't have to be deprived. I can tell you from experience that as soon as you change your diet, your tastes change and you start to appreciate fresh whole food, like nature intended. Doctor, thanks for all the great advice.
And Dick, thanks for working with me on this project. And for the viewers, I hope that you'll take some of this advice at least and put it into practice. And the best advice I can give you is to just try it and see. You'll feel great, and the weight will come off if you follow the program. Thank you very much.
And if you would like to learn more about the Eat More, Weigh Less diet, get Dr. Shintani's companion books, The Eat More, Weigh Less Diet. It features the Eat More Index Guide and shows you which foods help you lose weight effortlessly. And the Eat More, Weigh Less Cookbook, which is full of exciting, delicious, and easy recipes.